and welcome to my new video. This is Quake on the Sega Saturn. Now, I've already covered Quake in a previous video, and that was for the Nintendo 64. So when I got my Sega Saturn, I was keen to see how good or bad a job they did of converting it. And I have to say that I'm really impressed with this. I think this is, in many respects, superior to the Nintendo 64 version. The first thing that struck me was that the Trent Reznor 9 Inch Nails soundtrack was back in the game, which was a major plus point for me. I think it added an awful lot to the atmosphere, and it was the sort of generic, or should I best say imitation version that was on the Nintendo 64, whereas it wasn't too distracting from the actual gameplay itself. Just didn't really sit well with me. I would have much preferred that they stuck with the original soundtrack. I guess it was because of the limitations of the cartridge as to why they didn't include that on the Nintendo 64 version of the game. Obviously, the benefits of CD-ROM is that you can just spool it straight from the disc, so you can't do that with a cartridge. So I'm guessing that was the reason why it wasn't included in that. Now obviously the graphics in this don't look, on the surface of it, they don't look as pretty as the Nintendo 64 version, simply because of the fact that the N64 version obviously had superior graphics, but graphics capability, should I say, than the Saturn. But what I will say is that the gritty nature of this version, I think, just suits the game better. There was something at times a little bit too clean about the N64 graphics, and I do prefer these. I mean, frame rate wise, it's not up there with the N64, but that's to be expected. At the end of the day, the Saturn did get a lot of criticism in the fact that it wasn't something that was suited to 3D gaming, but seeing a game like this on there does make you think that maybe those sort of claims weren't entirely true. I mean, there's notable issues, shall we say, with regards to the frame rate, and that would lead, obviously lead a perfect sort of claim to the fact that, well, look, the game is struggling a little bit, but it's not hugely notable. It's certainly not as notable as it was in the Saturn version of Doom, which I'm also going to do a video for. And there are also a few different things as well. There's slight variations in the level layout. I'm imagining there are some levels that have been omitted. I'm not 100% sure about that, but knowing the trend for this to happen in other games around this time, so, it happened with Doom on the PlayStation version and on the Saturn version, and I know that the N64 version of Quake had certain levels missing. It wouldn't surprise me at all to find that the same thing applied to the Saturn version. I've not actually got through the whole of the game yet, so I can't really say for sure whether that's the case, but I would be surprised if the Saturn version was fully complete compared to the PC original. But, again, I have to say, I think this is a really good attempt. I think this is a really good conversion, and at the time I would say that it was probably as good a conversion on a console as you were going to get. Certainly as good a version on the Saturn that you were going to get. I mean, the personal preference of whether you rather play on the N64 version or the Saturn version, you know, is an individual choice. Personally, I just prefer the Saturn version for the reasons that I've already said. But that doesn't mean to say that the N64 version wouldn't be favourite amongst people too. So, you know, I suppose the fair thing to say is that, you know, it's as good as it was ever likely to be on the Saturn. Interestingly enough, the original Quake, to my knowledge, never made it out on the PlayStation, which does surprise me, because if the Saturn could handle it, then there's no doubt that the PlayStation could. And that seems a bit of a surprise that it came out on the Saturn and on the N64, but there was never a PlayStation version. There were the PlayStation version done of Quake 2, but not of the original Quake, which does surprise me. I would have liked to have seen this on the PlayStation done over with lighting effects, because that was the one area that the PlayStation really could excel, was when it came to lighting effects. I mean, you see that in the PlayStation version of Doom, and it would have been interesting to see what the developers or the people doing the conversion would have done with the lighting effects on a PlayStation version of Quake, but alas, they didn't. So this is probably as close as I was ever likely to getting it on the PlayStation. But yeah, I enjoy it. I think it's a really good game. I think it's well worth checking out. If you have a Saturn and don't have this, then you really do need to get hold of a copy of it, because it is one of the definitive Saturn games in my opinion. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. This is again Quake on the Sega Saturn. Thanks for watching, and please stay tuned to my channel for more videos to come in the near future. Thank you for watching.